minute.
It's all about the funny.
Yeah. Hey, everyone.
We've got the
Everybody's
Flying
got the-
Stampede joining us tonight. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
You guys are back at your on-air signs.
I know. Yeah. Back to my regular blue screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stampedes work on the stamps. I think some people at Texas saw that I have little stickers made up of my plane. And that's because when I go do the passport stamp thing, they're all in a like a mailbox with a stamp in there, and people have stickers on the inside of it. So this gives me something I can slap in there that's, kind of fun. So
Nice.
sure, that's the reason I made the stickers. That's it. Yeah.
I don't recall your windows being that shaded, but I guess you have to put some color in there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Yeah.
Cool.
Wet
All right.
airports. That sounds familiar.
Everything
Yeah.
sounds good, looks good.
Let's send it. Yeah. Gotta remember where everything is. All right.
Buttons.
Let's go.
Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. What is it like to become a pilot in midlife? The challenges are unique, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences. You definitely should not take any advice too seriously from an aviation podcast that uses terms like icing on the vegetables. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello and welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We are where we share the experiences and challenges of flying in midlife. Whether you're a seasoned pilot training for a rating or just thinking about starting in aviation, we like to think of the podcast as your aviation companion and your weekly dose of aviation inspiration. My name is Ben. I'm a pilot with an IFR rating and a commercial certificate. I'm based here in the metro Atlanta area, flying a Cessna 182 we like to call the Beast. Joining me tonight, as per usual, Brian, who is a private pilot in Nashville, home of the Bachelorette Super Charlie. He flies a Cherokee 180. He likes to call you Lucy, and I like to call her Lucy as well. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. And by the way, in our sheet, Ben, we've been trying to mention what we're talking about earlier, and I have it in just the most gigantic letters here. And I was hoping you would see. I just threw it in there, so I was.
I know. I saw it pop up as I was saying your name.
It's like a 40-point font.
I see it.
Yeah,
It just came across to me as I was saying your name. I mean, I was going to mention what we're going to talk about.
so I'll just say it. I'll say it.
ahead,
So
please.
tonight we are talking about private pilot check ride debriefs, insights, advice, and real experiences, all derived from patrons who have done check ride debriefs with us in our Patreon setup. So anyway, we've got a lot of things.
If we would maybe do that before the episode starts.
I know.
Also joining us tonight, Ted, our sport pilot. I couldn't come up with the word sport for some reason. Our sport pilot extraordinaire based in Portlandia, flying a flight design CTLS we like to call the Egg, which is now a pantless egg.
Yes.
But it's an egg nonetheless. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Man, it's nice to be home. It's been a little bit. So.
It has been a lot of bit for you, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have traversed just about the entire U.S.
Yeah.
2/3 of it, at least.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you can always go a little bit further. But
Yeah.
When I hit Mobile, Alabama, it's like, Apalachicola isn't that much further. And you can start the drinking game early today.
Yeah, there we go.
So, yeah.
Get some good oysters. Very
Yeah.
cool. So tell us, we want to hear a little bit more about the journey home. Now, you last episode, you had made it to Utah.
Yep.
Where you camped out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So the total trip was 63 hours. And I haven't counted up the actual flight miles, but just going point to point on the airports, which, of course, Wendell helped me geek out on this, but simply direct flights from every airport that I touched was 5,100 miles. So
I got to interject here for some
Yes.
context setting. There might not be people that quite understand here that you just got. We've been talking about the Big Texas Send for months. It finally
Yes.
happened. It happened a while ago. You just got home
yeah,
from all of that. That's what this is. This is you. What is it, like you took a wrong turn in Albuquerque kind of thing? So,
yeah, we've been talking about it for months, but I left months ago. So yeah, no. So I left a couple of days before the big send. It was in that same week. But my total trip was about 18 days, and there were reasons for that. But I had some time to have some fun. I saw some family. I had some errands to run. So just ended up staying out the whole
errands
time.
to run.
Errands to run. Yeah, just things to do. Yeah.
Do you not have a post office in Portland? Like, what is going on? Is that why you're flying airmail routes?
Yeah, literally flying airmail route. Yes. Yeah.
What was your route back from Utah back to Portland?
Oh, that's really easy. I can do it without worrying too much anymore. It's as is typical. It's IFR following the interstates. That's I follow roads. I don't
Right.
want to legally. I just want to make sure people know that's what I mean as a sport pilot. But yeah, it's just following the interstate back. So you go north out of Salt Lake, you kind of cut over to Boise and kind of keep going northwest from there and over west to Portland. So one stop on the way to get gas. My Salt Lake gas stop has been very unreliable, so I didn't even bother stopping there. I just went ahead and went to Boise for that. So, but yeah, it should be well under 6 hours, but I had a headwind, one of the only headwinds of the trip, and it was close to 7 by the time that day was done. But not bad. That was just Friday. It's like 7 hours is fine.
So when you left Texas, you guys both went to New Orleans.
Yes.
Now, and then Ben went on home because he has, I don't know what you call it, responsibilities.
Oh, a job.
And then and you stayed. So you stayed in New Orleans for a while with our friend
Mike Apple Golf. Yeah.
Yeah. I stayed with Mike Alpha Golf in New Orleans for 2 nights. Didn't stay with him, but hung out in New Orleans for 2 nights.
Okay.
And hopped east to Mobile, Alabama, up from there through Missouri, and stayed in Arkansas for the night. Went from there back down into Texas for gas, and Sulphur Springs is where I stayed the night there. Also to
Okay,
avoid
right.
the storms. Up to Colorado, then the airmail route up and over to
Okay. Yeah.
Utah, southern Utah, back up to northern Utah, which is where we left off last week.
Right. So okay.
So
Good.
really, I've only done like 7 hours of flying since the last podcast and now. Only. Yeah.
You know, Brian, when we're all like 85 years old, and MoGas is like readily available everywhere. I'm going to hear Ted going, back in my day, you know, we had to fly 300 miles out of the way just to get our MoGas.
Northwest Arkansas to East Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to refine my own MoGas in the back of my plane while I was flying it.
Yeah.
Our friend Nathan Ballard in the chat, Ted made lifetime diamond medallion egg status.
This is true. Yeah. The egg's gotten a lot of flying, which has been fantastic. So I really enjoyed it.
You've got bugs from all different habitats and time zones plastered all over that thing.
Yep. I went home and cleaned off the leading edge of the wings and the belly, which is only the second time I've ever cleaned the belly on it because it doesn't burn oil or spill oil.
No, it's got oil, doesn't it? Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
So that was it. I didn't even clean the windshield actually, but I went out and had a 20-minute flight after changing the oil, and it was just pouring down rain. So I don't actually need to clean the windshield anymore.
So now there's a lot in that. There's a lot of little micro moments, and I'm looking forward, by the way, to your however many, what is it, like exabytes or like what is it?
It's terabytes of video.
What I'm glad that you probably got like a whole Amazon Web Services set up just for your YouTube now, because you film absolutely everything, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see I mean, you're going to have a lot to go through and it'll take time, but everybody make sure you follow Ted's channel because they're great videos and they always look amazing because the view out of the egg is unsurpassed.
It is. Yeah.
So yeah. And, you know, but if you had one thing that's a takeaway on your whole flying a trip from just a pilot and flying perspective, was there a particular moment or a conclusion or a thought that you had
from a pilot perspective? And I know that I shared this with a flying friend. I'm not sure if I shared with him midlife at all, but right before last week's episode, I had flown up from southern Utah and it was really windy, and I didn't land at Spanish Fork, Mike Patey's airport, because it was a direct crosswind. Went for the next airport. But then I was headed up to my final airport and it was 30 gusting 37. And it's like, that is over most people's limits. I fly out of such a crazy airport that I was within my range of that. It was only 10 degrees off the runway. When I turned base, it actually became 20 degrees off the runway. And I thought, 30 with 20 degrees, no big deal. Went back later and calculated it. 30 knot wind, 20 degrees off the runway heading is 10 knots of crosswind. So 20 degrees off the runway makes a huge difference, where I was just kind of rounding that to zero. And, a 10 knot crosswind is significant. So,
for the egg.
Yeah. The egg's rated at 16, so it's pretty similar to, it's pretty good. But when you mentally, you're like, oh, this is just, 2 or 3 knots. And then later you're right. You're like, oh, okay.
Oh, I was definitely doing when we came into Longview, going on our way to the Big Texas Send, and I had a 40 knot wind on short final, and it was definitely the same kind of calculations going on where it was like, it's only 10 degrees off the runway, but that's a lot of wind. And if that shifts at all, what are we looking at? Like, that could get way out of perspective real fast, but it was, it was absolutely fine. It wasn't, an ideal situation, but it was fine. So yeah, that is a funny, the way that there's some kind of, algorithmic, I guess, way or logarithmic way that works, where it's almost like decibels or something, what I mean? Where it's not just a linear, progression. There's some, arc to that. By the way, just so you guys know, if I lose power or disappear, there's crazy storms here right now. So
your sign just went red. So behind you.
Oh, it did. That's right.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
It sure
White
did.
and red. Yeah.
Actually, it looks pink. So that means low.
The stripe is the thing going across is the winds have gone beyond 10 knots.
Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah. I see it now. So
yeah, we were VFR just a minute ago, people. This is a real time environment.
Yes. So let's go ahead and get to the belly scrubbing so we can get to our topic.
Yeah, let's do that. So, you know what? Actually, here's what we're going to do for the belly scrub tonight, people. Everything we're going to be talking about after this is from our private pilot check ride debriefs that we do on Patreon. If you want to know more about those debriefs or Patreon, just go to midlifepilotpodcast.com and get all the information. Boom, done. Good. Moving on. Now, we have, do you want to hit this feedback real quick?
Sure. I'd love to hit the feedback.
All right.
We got for all of those out there, we would really appreciate if you would go into Apple or Spotify or where you listen to your podcast and leave us a 5-star review. It does help us a lot. This is from Scott W. The title of the review is Good Podcast, Great People. I've had the opportunity to listen to most of the episodes, and I find them both informative and entertaining. The show maintains a deliberately loose structure, which helps it avoid feeling like a formal training session. It's by design or not, you be the judge.
Yeah.
He continues.
It's working. It's working.
Its real strength lies in the hosts, their natural chemistry, engaging dialogue, and the ease with which they connect with each other. The real magic, though, is how genuine Ben, Brian, and Ted are in person. I recently attended the Tango 82 fly-in, and they each made a sincere effort to connect with us, the listeners. That level of personal engagement reinforces why the podcast feels so welcoming and authentic. Thank you for that.
Very
That's
cool.
very,
Thanks,
very
Scott.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very nice.
As an introvert, it is weird where people turn and look at you and they kind of know you. It's the parasocial relationship, and I realized that when we were in Nashville, and it's like it's fine. Like everybody that comes, we actually know something about. We have such a great community, and everybody talks and shares where they're at and they're flying and everything else. And so then when we get together, like at Tango 82, it's like, oh, I know your story. Oh, I recognize your name. I know, like every one of those people are in our community. And,
Yeah.
And so like it's really easy.
It's like Cheers on a delay.
Right. That's exactly it.
So I'm gonna bang through this one real quick.
Yep.
This came through an email, right?
That is correct.
So if anybody wants to email us, midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. No, we don't own the domain gmail.com.
Yeah.
Although that would have been smart. Put it on the missed opportunity list of pets.com and all the others. All right. From Ryan K. 5 stars in mind, body, and soul. Is that right? Yeah, 5 stars in mind, body, and soul. Good evening, distinguished hosts. That's already off the rails. I feel compelled to write this review, albeit a little late. Ever since the big Texas send, life, as they say, has gotten in the way. That said, I want to commend each of you for the tremendous effort you've put into building and cultivating such an incredible community around a fantastic podcast. I discovered the Midlife Pilot podcast less than a year ago, thanks to a recommendation from some questionable Midwest pilot podcasters. From the very start, I could tell this group was different. The level of engagement and genuine support, not just from the hosts, but among listeners, stood out immediately. When the opportunity came to meet many of you in person this month, I knew I had to make every effort to attend. I'm so glad that everything aligned. Upon arrival, I was blown away even more. These guys are the real deal, authentic, encouraging, and always ready with positive feedback. I've never once hesitated to post a comment. I've never hesitated to post a comment or a question in this group. In a world filled with keyboard warriors and trolls, especially in other aviation spaces, this podcast community remains refreshingly positive, just like we hear in the Belly Scrub, the one we chose not to do tonight. But you get the idea. So that's awesome. So to Ben, Ted, Brian, and OG Chris, a sincere thank you. I'm proud to support and carry the Midlife Pilot podcast flag.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Ryan. That's so
Very
kind.
nice,
Really appreciate
Ryan.
it. Yeah.
It is
Jeez.
really awesome.
It was cool to meet Ryan, and he's a OB fan as well. So sent a message over to them when we were in Texas, and it's great to have those connections with people and to see what we have in common.
And
Right.
now we have to make some flags. So.
Yeah.
Same
Or
thing.
banners.
Yeah.
And he's got a beautiful airplane too. That RV10 is pretty sweet. So tonight, we've got this huge collection of pilot debriefs. Our friend Wendell Geek, who's in the chat, also known as Mark, has kind of led the charge with this. So we owe him a really, really big thanks, sincere gratitude for all that he's done. And what we've done is we've taken these debriefs and, we've gone through them. And what we thought for our listeners is that we're going to kind of relay some of the things that we've learned. Even as a commercial rated pilot, when I watch a private pilot check ride debrief, I still learn. I've said this before. So we kind of wanted to go around the horn, and it's not just the check ride itself. Mark does a really good job of digging in and finding out their entire pilot journey, from the moment they stepped in the airplane to their actual check ride, the oral, the practical, all of it. So I thought it started out, excuse me. And, Mark, as I mentioned, he starts, how did you get inside the cockpit of an airplane? And, it's interesting. There have been a lot of different paths that these people that have done this debrief have done. We got a quote from Bit Shifter. My first flight in my logbook is like 20, 20, 2010, and I got my sport pilot certificate November. So it was like 13 years long. So he went from 2010 to, or 2000 to 2010 till he got to that point. Other people have had, for me, 9 months, and we've had some people that were 2 years. So I think it's important for everybody to take away. Everybody's going to be completely different, and there's nothing wrong with that.
It's amazing how unique everybody's path really is, and I think that's what's neat about these debriefs is when we uncover that. I mean, you can get a sense of that maybe in other forums and other places and all that, but when you really get the richer tale of an individual's story, when they're just free to sit and talk about it for a while and how they started, it's pretty fascinating. So yeah, just the idea that, I mean, it took me 5 months, but that was not because I'm so great. It was because if I didn't cram everything into my life to do it in those 5 months, it was not going to happen. And if it was going to take 6 months, I wasn't going to be able to do it. It was that kind of thing. So everybody's circumstances wildly different. And we've mentioned many times that, comparison is the thief of joy. Do not compare. So really, really cool to get those. And one of the things that people elaborated on in these Checkrides debriefs that I think is also important is just how their relationship with their instructor set them up for success or perhaps did not. And our friend Foxtrot Charlie was talking about, how somebody had come into their sort of a big shot had kind of come in to do their ground school. And he said, Foxtrot Charlie says, I asked him, he's talking about this kind of big shot instructor. I asked him if he had room for me, and he took me and we hit it off, and he's been a great instructor. And so I chose wisely, so it's like you have opportunities to see people doing things maybe on a smaller level, or adjacent to maybe other studies that you started, and you're going to find somebody that you connect with. And it seems like that one of the things that we've noticed is that when people are very deliberate about their choices for instructor, that really is obviously a way to set yourself up for more success. Don't just take who the flight school gives you. If you don't mesh with them, don't do it. But that's for another episode, and we've talked about those things before. But I just wanted to mention that. And then Ted, you're going to talk about medical.
Well, yeah, but first that hurdle of walking onto the airport the first time, like that's huge, and it's one of those cases where you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know who to look for an instructor, or that you're supposed to look out for them. And I feel like if you're listening to us, it's probably too late for that. We can't give you the advice. You're probably into your flying by then. But man, that's definitely something that we all could have, I think most of us could have done a lot better, which is learning how to evaluate instructors, or that there is an audition process.
I think it's important, if you're listening to this podcast and you're about to walk into a flight school or interviewing instructors, it might take you 5, 6, 10 lessons and figure out this guy might not be the right guy. I think the main takeaway from this piece is always be open to changing if it's not working for you. You're not stuck with them. So
yeah. And the good instructors are more than happy to refer you to someone else. So right. I think that's a great opportunity. One thing that we've talked about with some people, and I don't have great notes of this, but we definitely have stories of people coming in and just having a great experience just with their medicals, of walk in, see the doctor, walk out, it's all done. We've had the opposite story from someone like Zeb, who had major medical hurdles and knew it was going to take some time. We had someone, I don't want to mention the name, we had somebody who dealt with the new ADHD process. We've had people who were sport pilots and relinquished that to go through their private pilot check ride as their medical situation changed. So that is, again, that's one of those things where it's like, I wish I could tell people before they started this journey, know what you're getting into, and what I always say is that, the real tragic thing is when you see the person kind of loping around the airport who's at that pre-solo stage just waiting for their medical, right? And it could be a year where they're just waiting for my medical to come through. It's like,
Yeah,
you shouldn't
and
have
that's an
started.
expensive
Yeah.
place to be for an unknown outcome.
Oh
Yep.
yeah, exactly. And devastating. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's definitely something that, there's real value. One of the values of these debriefs is that we do talk about them in private, and they don't make it to the podcast itself. And so we can talk a lot more in detail and talk about personal experiences like medical issues.
Right. Wanted to move on to the next one, which is the aircraft that these debriefers have trained in. More specifically, renting versus owning. And we got a quote from Foxtrot Charlie from his DPE. He said, he goes, "I can tell you that you fly that plane a lot. I would have bet $100 that there was no way you were going to land, you were going to get that short field landing." He said, "You knew exactly what it was about to do because it touched down right where you said it was going to touch down." So if you're have an opportunity, to at least take a share of an ownership in an airplane to do your training, there are a lot of advantages to that. But there's also advantages to renting, obviously. Ted and I have talked about that in the previous episode. But
And ultimately, they're not mutually exclusive. So
No.
to be clear, it's one of those things where when I was training, what I figured out early on was just because I'm flying 172s, when they changed the 172 that I'm flying in, and now the tachometer is on the upper right side of the panel instead of a digital tack on the bottom left, or those little things really mess you up when you're learning. So just I think the takeaway from what Foxtrot Charlie said here and what was said to him about the value of really knowing that aircraft is, especially when you're on a check ride, you're going to want to really feel like you have confidence in that plane, the plane. And that's a convenience that sometimes people don't get. I've heard plenty of stories where people have to use a totally different plane that they've never even maybe flown before for their check ride. I'm not saying like another type, but you know what I'm saying. So anyway, so rent, own, that's its own discussion, but ultimately it's about familiarity with the aircraft, and just go ahead and be thinking in your training that think about your check ride. Think about, I don't want to be questioned on things during my check ride where I don't know where it is.
Right.
Well, and it can be done, but the real thing is it's reducing the variables, reducing the risk, right? It's
That's
like
right.
nobody says you can't suddenly switch planes the day before because the one was crashed and this is your only choice. Great, do it. But man, reduce the risk. Just the fewer variables you have going into a check ride, the better.
Yeah. And so that brings us obviously to the everybody has their own solo experience to talk about in these check ride debriefs. And Ben is telling me that he can hear when I'm typing. So here's the thing, Ben. Ted and I both have these, which
I
are
know.
insane.
I just
So,
giving you early warning, but thanks for calling me out.
Yes.
It makes us sound like a more legitimate newsroom from the 70s.
Nobody told me we were going for the newsroom feel.
That's what these things sound like, though. They are.
I do.
They're great. Yeah.
It's like passive aggressive in the house for "I'm working right now, leave me alone," without you having to say anything because they're so loud. But anyway, so yeah,
You're
solo
talking about
experiences.
Yep.
Yeah, so solo experiences. I love this quote from Foxtrot Charlie. He says, "As a Type A male, I felt like I was ready to solo after 2 weeks, but probably a month worth of thinking that it was coming any day." So have realistic expectations about that solo. Some people, and this will come again later when we're actually talking about the check ride part of this, but nobody ever feels ready for the check ride. I wanted to feel ready for my solo, but how do you know what that is at that stage? You just have to trust that your instructor has some dog in the hunt here and is not looking for a lawsuit or a way to lose their job. So, those first solo moments, see, we got Lima 1 talking about my solo flight was awful. My landings were shockingly bad. Well, that's not uncommon. And so here we are. So that's the cool thing is that, in these check ride debriefs, you're getting people that are, type A, let's go, get after it. Other people that are taking longer to do it and maybe not even having the best solo experience. But I'll spoiler alert, these all end in the same way.
That's right.
But yeah, so now Ted, what do you know about Plateaus?
This is the thing that I talk about a lot because it happened to me, and I think a lot of people don't talk about it, right? Which is the amount of time that you spend feeling stupid in training, the amount of time where you think maybe you're not going to get this, and we had some people talk about those. Bitshifter said somewhere along the way I forgot how to land. I had hundreds of landings in my logbook, and I just completely did I ever know how to fly? yeah, those still happen. Yeah.
It happens to everyone.
Yeah. Foxtrot Charlie, who knows the plane they fly in. I had this weird month where I was just crater win all these landings, and I'm just going, what the crap's going on? Why I can't put this plane down? Totally. And Mr. Dolgeek, when he's talking to them, said, yeah, 700 hours, that's still common. And I agree. There are those wait a minute, what am I doing differently right now? Because this feels so weird. But yeah, I had that. I always say it was from hour 5 to hour 20 was my plateau. And there's landings. There's also just kind of the instinct of hey, we're kind of drifting to the right. Why did I just hit the stick further to the right? That's the wrong direction to go here. Those instincts, and that I think is totally a midlife thing, which is you haven't had new experiences that need to get drilled into your brain like this. So,
God, you want to talk about drifting and which control to use. I have such a distinct memory of not being able to reconcile right rudder in a when you're drifting to the right. So when you're really trying to understand longitudinal alignment, because everything in my body and soul is saying there's no way I'm going to put in a control that directs anything towards the right when I feel like we're about to go off the side of the runway.
Yeah.
And I just could not reconcile that in my brain at that stage early on. As far as plateaus, I'm still in mine, working through it, just seeing how it goes. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Very cool. The next part that we wanted to talk about was the actual check ride preparation, specifically studying for the oral exam, especially for the private pilot. It's not an easy thing to do because, your instructor can say this DPE will be, conversational or whatever, but until you go through it, you really don't know. And the mind shift that's required when you're studying this is different for us midlifers. Not by a little bit either. We got a quote from Foxtrot Charlie. He said, excuse me, if I had studied in school as well as I studied to learn to study for this, I would have done way better in school. I had this table I'm sitting at now, half the table, and I had it covered up for 6 or 10 weeks with huge Post-it notes, easel boards, and I made note cards on every topic I could. And I couldn't echo that. I've made it known I was not the best high school or college student. And if I would have put the same amount of effort, might be in a different career altogether. Who knows?
Yep. I'm on the same page there. I did the bare minimum is what I did. And it was artfully done. I actually went into school and but the beginning of my senior year of high school, I actually went to the office and I just said, I need somebody to tell me for sure what is the exact minimum GPA that I can have and still graduate. And then I also would and follow-up question, how many days can I miss and still graduate? And then they told me, the minimum GPA and the minimum or amount of the maximum amount of days that I could miss. And let me tell you, the execution that it took to meet exactly those numbers was profound. I had to track my own progress. It was a whole thing. And it really set me up for becoming a pilot because that kind of precision, understanding regulations, That's really important. No, I was a terrible student, and I was fine cutting corners, and there is no greater motivation than when you're studying as a midlife pilot, where you're thinking it's not just me out here. We've got families, we have things to lose. We called the event the Big Texas Send, but we don't just send it, necessarily.
Yeah.
And it's a very thoughtful thing that you have to really apply yourself. So I definitely relate to that so much. Wow, I'm actually a good student if it really matters, and this really matters. Yeah,
Right.
I think that there's a couple of things that balance that. The one is it is harder to learn and to retain knowledge as you get older.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, I can't remember what I said.
Because he's not retaining very much right now.
Can you say it again slower?
And then the other part is that you are really motivated for it. So even though in high school you were less motivated, things stuck in your brain easier. And now it's the opposite of that. So it's the curse of experience, right? It's as we usually say, it's imagine taking what you know now and going back and reliving high school. It'd be terrible. It'd be the worst person there. So yeah.
Yep. So excuse me. A couple of our listeners had done mock Checkrides. I had done one as well. It went completely horrible. But
tell us about that.
I think I may have told you this story before. Our chief flight instructor, I mean, he was probably 6'4". He had a long ponytail. He was basically a hippie and just the most awesome guy on the planet. Somebody who you just really sought to hang out with and kind of commanded respect in the room. He just was a great guy. And, he got in the plane with me, and I had my he gave me a route like we're going to fly on the Checkride. And I had my map and folded right in place. And then he said, okay, well, tell me, where are we with this airport? And I just blanked. I'm like, what airport are you talking about? And I flipped the map open, and the page just whacks him in the face. And just everything's flying, nothing went right. And I could see he was kind of smirking and kind of smiling. And he took controls and let me gather myself because I was just so nervous about it. He goes, take a breath, relax. Here's where that airport is. And then it all kind of came back together. And he goes, you're fine. But, I'm glad we saw these nerves now. You're going to have them when you meet with the DPE. So it went off bad.
I've got to say, on this giant Texas trip, when I had time, I was taking paper sectionals and opening them up and tracking my progress based on landmarks that I saw and trying to do the true pilotage thing.
Yeah.
Not using my GPS to figure out where I was. Sometimes I circle a spot and put the time in a GPS to get me started. But then, going based on, I recognize that lake, I recognize this little town, that type of thing. And marking those with a purple marker that I stole from my teacher partner, and writing the times on them and everything else. I wasn't sitting there and calculating out times or speeds or anything else, but that getting back to that skill was really interesting. And I could only do it when things weren't getting very busy, which is the time when you're a lot more bored and the time that you actually need to know it less.
63 hours in the airplane. You had a lot of time to be able to do this.
I had some time that I was bored. Yeah.
And there's no other. You can't just look at other people's license plates or.
But so anyway, getting back to the value of the practice runs, we got a quote from Bit Shifter from the debrief. He said, "I called a different instructor also in the club, and I'm like, right, all this is happening. Pretend that I'm a brand new student." And he went through that process with them. And it really helped him out. So,
yeah, I know that Foxtrot Charlie was really kind of chill about it, though. And he wasn't expecting to be concerned, but then he was the last few days he was really stressed out about it. I think that, and Brian, you've talked about this, but we're not used to failing. We're not used to having to focus that much on succeeding. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Being hapless.
Yeah.
and under that kind of scrutiny, in such a I don't know, strangely direct way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can go ahead and cut into everybody's favorite topic or subtopic around this, but I don't know about you guys, but did you guys have any anxiety or nervousness around your check rides?
Yeah.
I mean, is there any other anxiety that is like that? Okay, so I don't have any children. Ben, compare check ride anxiety to wife going into labor anxiety.
For me, it was like leading up to the moment until I walked into the room is where the anxiety hit me the most.
For the baby or the check ride?
Yes. Once I was in the room in both places, I was totally fine. So to answer your question, they're both very, very similar. It's, again, you've spent months and months preparing for this moment. Your wife is preparing months and months for that moment as well.
Again,
9
both,
to be
yes.
roughly. But the point is that we all put pressure on ourselves to do this, and and it's going to depend on the DPE. I'm sure some people have walked into some rooms where it was super intense the entire time. My private check ride DPE, he just like, we're going to have a conversation. It's going to be fun. We're going to relax. If you need to take he just was very quick to put me at ease. So, and I think that happens probably more times than not.
Yeah.
Y'all's experience any different?
I mean, I think that the thing that you forget about is they are on your side, right? They want you to pass. This isn't a hostile relationship, and so they're trying to help you out. It doesn't feel like that when you're on the other side of it, because you're so it's just so new to you. Yeah. So, and all the knowledge it's like you're a beginner at it, and you know that.
Well, we have a quote here from Foxtrot Charlie. It says, I don't get stressed out about much stuff, and I was exhausted for 3 days. I mean, the buildup of that anxiety and that tension, and then getting through the ride itself, it's almost like if you didn't everybody's going to be anxious and nervous, but the way that you really understand that is how you feel after, because it's just a different, like, how many pounds do you feel like just came off of your back,
right,
in that moment? But yeah, and for me, it was, my check ride was on my wife's birthday. And,
did you know that before that day that was her birthday, or?
I mean, I've only remembered her birthday once, and it was that day. No, but it was, so I was in a position, and I think other people get in this position a lot, which is the tail end of your training goes quickly, and it is expensive, because you're doing those mock check rides, you're doing doubly sort of long flights, cross countries, burning more time, burning more gas, burning more instructor time, needing more time. And then if you're on a delay and you're trying to sustain your abilities and your skills, everything just kind of ramps up. So I was in a place where if I didn't get this done now, this fund is about to be over, and it's like, it's now or never. So, I mean, and I'm not saying now or never, but it was going to be, I was going to have to, if I couldn't get it done when I did, I was going to have to stop and then maybe have another 6 months to a year to try to save up again or do whatever I needed to do it. I mean, that's really how close it was. And so the pressure that I felt was combined with, yes, because my wife knew that how much stress I was under, but she's like, if you, she didn't really say it, but it was kind of like, if you fail your check ride on my birth, it's kind of like, it's going to scar me. Like it's going to, like it's going to be attached to this, negative emotion attached to her birthday forever. But ultimately I think that the anxiety for me, as much as it was the performance, anxiety that you have about all aspects of doing everything correctly and really hitting everything and making sure your skills are on and all that. I think there's a lot of people that are in a situation like I was in, where it's like, I don't have the money to do this for like, I don't have the money to do this forever. This has to happen. This has to have a good outcome now.
Right.
So that was my anxiety.
Well, you could have always sold that second kidney. You don't need you don't need either of them, right?
No.
My thing was, I didn't want to be very public about the date of it, and then have people ask me, did you succeed? No, I failed. And so I kept that very quiet, even
you
just
wanted to say, you just didn't want people saying, did you fail today? You wanted to be able to,
exactly.
You just wanted to be able to tell people I failed 3 weeks ago.
I wanted a little bit of time to process that. But
sure.
We did a debrief with someone who didn't even tell their partner that they had gone and done the check ride that day. So that I thought was kind of impressive. Like I wouldn't be able to keep that away from my partner, but that was pretty good.
No, I was carrying way too much anxiety. I let my whole household know how I was feeling about that. So
yeah.
One of the other areas that we wanted to check in on was Brian's telling me that I get to do the whole oral exam. So we're going to examine both of you too. No, just what to expect, how it's structured, and the approach. And, I think all DPAs do it pretty much the same, but, we got a quote from one of our listeners who said, my view going into this was that the oral component of it was going to be very regimented. He printed out this nice plan of action with all the check boxes and stuff, and then promptly threw it out the window. I mean, this guy was all over the place. I do think that they have boxes to check, but I think the really good DPEs are just going to build this in a discussion on a flight you're going to take, which is part of what, your plan that you've prepared. They're going to build all the questions about weather and about aerodynamics and about regulations and systems, all kind of center around your flight plan. Now, not everybody does it, but that's the route that was for me, and it really made it kind of easy. So,
which by the way, just always get the gouge on your DPE.
Yeah,
and if you can get the gouge from somebody that just had a check ride with them, where it's fresh, and because one downside I think to our private pilot check ride debriefs and instrument debriefs and everything else is that we can't dox people. Like we can't just be like, here's a library of the nation's DPEs and the latest gouge on all of them. But you, listener, please go get that. If you're not doing that, get that. That is the key. That is the answer key, really, because the structured approach can be the same. It can be very different. It can be kind of the same, but ultimately, your guy is going to probably do the same thing he did 3 weeks ago. Go find out what he did 3 weeks ago.
Right. And your CFI in your school should kind of be on the hook for that. Because they know who you're going to, and they should be able to prepare you for that. So it's much worse if we do that, because we don't know anybody who's used that DPE, or at least hasn't used them in months.
Yeah.
If not longer. So I found that the experience from the CFI would just quiz you over and over and over and over again with things, just point blank, that you needed to know. But then when you go and you talk to the DPE, they are asking it integrated into a scenario. And so it was easier to do that in a scenario. What happens if you need to fly in late and it's going to be after hours? Well, it's a lot easier to synthesize that to the actual question than to just go point blank on all the information that you must know. And we've had people talk about those the really common sections that come up. Foxtrot Charlie struggled with doing a time zone conversion, because it's
I still do.
Yeah, I've only had to do it one way, not going the other way. BitShifter talked about, I think, the thing that everybody thinks about, which is 91205 equipment requirements. And there's lots of arguments about what you need to know out of that and what you can look up. And that's kind of what BitShifter said, which was, for all practical purposes, the answer for me is everything needs to be working. And if something's not working, then I'll look it up, which is so much different than, oh, I need to memorize a phrase, 8 tomato flames, and know what each of the things means on there. And so those are the things I think you have to focus on a lot in your kind of training is memorizing those things and being super familiar with the information.
Absolutely.
By the way, some good comments in the chat here. There's a massive flood of inquiry now about the etymology or the meaning or the source of the gouge. Where does that come from? So if you guys...
It's a military term. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you just blew the whole thing, Ted, because I was going to say, if you could email us and let us know, and then we could have a phrase. Yeah. We could have a feedback that's all about the gouge. But now Ted just,
I wrote in about it. Yeah.
Ted just gouged the gouge.
There we go. We don't want to keep this moving along. So let's talk about the flight portion. The flight portion.
No, we do want to keep it moving along.
Yeah. That's what I said.
He thought you said,
you think I want to keep this? You just want to talk about the stress and anxiety the entire podcast?
That's what we do. That's our podcast.
Yes. Well, I have a very funny story, but we'll save that for a later time because it's too long. But maybe the next episode. But we were talking with some of the debriefers about setting the stage of the flight portion, common challenges. How do their landings go? Because, that's what we all probably stress about the most. But, there's these more moments of anxiety. One of our listeners said he got in the plane. There was no keys. He had left the keys to the airplane on the conference table in the FBO, which was about a half a mile away. So he had that full distance to run back to the FBO and, wondering, what the DP is thinking of him, run back and then catch his breath.
Keys is not in the 8 tomato flames.
Nope. I think he actually mentioned that he was thinking about hot wiring the plane to save him from having to go back to get the keys. And another quote from BitShifter, he told us, he said that he had all of his databases in his plane had expired. So in between the oral and the actual flight, he had to ask the DPE, he goes, could you give me a minute so I can go update all these databases? So, these things happen, and I'm sure the DP was glad to have a little bit of a break in that situation. So, and then some of the more common challenging maneuvers that our listeners talked about, he turns around the point and he showed, actually one of the DPEs showed one of our listeners different techniques for doing that. And he said, not worry about your altitude as much. He's more worried about his distance from that point, which can, help you maintain airspeed too, keep you from going up and down.
That's closer to the commercial maneuver, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. 8s on pylons. This is very similar to that. Yep.
Well,
and then go ahead.
One thing that was great was that on my private pilot check ride, the instructor or the DPE, I guess they can use the pattern as ground reference maneuvers if they want, as opposed to getting you to do one of those things.
I've not heard that before. It's interesting.
Yeah. He wanted to get lunch. So,
yeah,
so that was that. But the one thing I will say that I remember was when I was about to do my steep turns and you're really concerned about, I'm not going to get a bust on not even thinking about, I want to make sure I'm doing clearing turns and, all these things. And there was just like a couple of little wispy non-cloud clouds at our altitude that were sort of one on one side and kind of like one on the other. And in retrospect, it's hilarious to me because, this is like, in today's mindset that I have with the hours that I have, it's such a laughable, kind of ridiculous thing to be concerned about, which I understand now. But then it's like, I'm not, no, because I was like, it's like, are you sure I can do the steep turn here? Like I see, he's like, it's not a cloud if you can see through it, kind of thing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but I kept feeling like this is a setup. Like,
Right.
like he's
Right.
waiting for me to go, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna demonstrate a hazardous pilot attitude of being, like complicit resignation type of thing or something. Oh, well, he said, so then I'm doing it. It's like, I gotcha. I kept waiting for something
Busted.
you know what? I have about 3 every month that fall for the old sure touch the cloud, but it's not, is it a cloud? So anyway, but yeah, so everybody has their challenges with maneuvers and all of that.
Yep.
But landings, that is, and by the way, and we're going to get more into this, but teaching moments, you're slowly starting to hear now more and more as we're getting into the actual check ride. What is the thing that everybody's talking about? Teaching moments from the DPE. That is what is actually happening.
Yes.
As much as you're being examined. And that is the pathway, by the way, back to our anxiety points. If you can just really believe and understand that they want you to succeed, like you said, Ted, but also they want opportunities to teach and they love doing it. And so if you can just, and then my oral exam, I knew that he wanted to teach. And so I kept asking him questions about things and then he would talk about them for a very long time. And that was a tactic. So use every tool you can, but make sure that you understand they want to teach. It's a wholehearted, genuine feeling that you get with your DPE that you never would expect. They all want you to win. They all want to teach and they love aviation and they wouldn't do it if they didn't. So, but in terms of landings, I had a lot of trouble on mine because the winds had completely gone bonkers. I had to go around 2 times to get. It was my 3rd attempt for the the short field landing.
Yep.
I had to do that 3 times. I went around, and I think that I had a lot of extra speed to penetrate the insane winds that were happening, and I'm not quite sure what that distance was, but it was not. And he was like, I'm hungry, man. Like, you did a good job, So anyway, I mean, nobody's out there with a tape measure, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
if you get it, I don't know. So, but I didn't say, ooh, blew that one. I didn't say,
Right.
well, gosh, I guess I got to do that again. See you tomorrow. Like, so keep your mouth shut. That's the other thing, right? So, but anyway, so now, by the way, real quick, how did you guys do on your landings for your check ride? Private.
Well, I got a discontinuance on but of course I was on a power off 180. That was during the practical test standards, the PTS. So I did great on all of them except for one, and that one busted me. So
mine were okay. They were fine. I mean, it's hard to simulate soft field on a runway, like I always had trouble with that. But I want to hit a couple comments here before we wrap up. Adam V said, I did an overly cautious go around on my check ride because I thought I was being set up.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Wendell Geek, another quote from the debriefs. I figured when they get to the point they were willing to teach, I was doing well. That is very true. How did you know you passed?
Right, when they stopped screaming.
Yeah.
Well, so we have a lot to get through here in the next few minutes. We're going to do our best here, guys, because we are doing a double header tonight. This is the private pilot portion. Stay tuned for the next hour. It'll be all instrument, and we will look to Ben to tell us what that's about, because I haven't even looked at an instrument. I don't even know what they are. I just look outside.
You look outside. Yep.
Yeah. No, but how pilots knew that they passed. This is there's a couple of great quotes that we have from you just read that one. Wait, I'm sorry. Geek actually is repeating this exact same one that we have in our notes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the one from Foxtrot Charlie, though, he said in the beginning, no news is good news. When I landed, we got clearance to get on the taxiway, and I said, well, no news is good news. He goes, you ought to know you passed, But it's definitely just keep your mouth shut. Don't make a judgment out loud about your performance. Let them do that, because they want you to win.
Yeah.
One quick adjunct to that, though,
Yeah.
is talk through while you're doing your procedures. Somebody had commented earlier, if you're doing steep turns and you see that you're getting a low, say it out loud and correct it. It helps your situation. It helps your case with the DPE when he knows that you're identifying what you're doing wrong and you're working to correct it.
Which means do that in your practice.
Correct.
If you just do it all the time, then you're just doing what you're used to doing and you're not putting on a show. So, but yeah, so real quick, lessons learned and advice in the category of what they wish they had known from BitShifter. Persistence. As much trouble as I've had, I wouldn't trade it. I mean, I've enjoyed most of the process. There were definitely some parts that were, enjoy your training, enjoy spending time learning the plane, enjoy just doing the maneuvers. Everything is, ultimately fun. And so I think that is a huge takeaway. We forget that we're doing this on purpose for fun. So have fun. And it's hard because you feel the pressure and that midlife thing we talk about, So we want to be successful in this endeavor. So it's tough. Practical tips. Ben, you want to hit a couple of these real quick?
Yeah. Foxtrot Charlie, he said, the one thing that my instructor really drilled into my head was just as we just mentioned, just talk through everything. I saw myself getting low. We're going to add a little bit of pressure on the yoke, maybe a little bit more power. Talk through everything. If they know what's going on through your mind, they're going to be more willing to help you get through it. So,
talk, but don't say like, why is that happening?
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah. Some of those inner thoughts you probably should keep inside. So, and then the other was just from BitShifter, just breathe. And nobody expects perfection. When you get to a check ride, your instructor believes in you, and your instructor wouldn't have signed the paperwork if they didn't.
That's right.
So it always comes back to just breathe.
Yeah.
So, and one last one, and it's one of my favorites. Foxtrot Charlie said, I tell everybody anytime somebody says, I've always wanted to do that, I tell them the two best times to plant a tree was 30 years ago and today. And a year from now, you could be flying. So,
yes, that's really it. And also, for those that it takes a long time to get it done, when we talked early on about people that it was a protracted effort that they had to come back to, sometimes you can plant that tree and it is the tree from 30 years ago, and that's okay
right.
too.
That's
so,
right.
But we don't want to make it sound like, it's easy, because it's not. Everybody should be commended. And really, I just think it's so fantastic that we have so many people in our Patreon letting us, with One Dull Geek, getting interviewed, getting the truth extracted, and their experience. And I think that they'll be able to have that to go back to themselves as kind of a memento and re-attenuate to the things that they were experiencing, right? Because we get people generally right after these experiences. And so it's all very fresh and maybe not even totally synthesized yet. So that's what's really cool. Yeah. Everybody has a lot of challenges. DPEs want you to succeed. The check ride is not as scary as you think it's going to be. And BitShifter said, in terms of post-check ride feelings, is this real? You're handing me a certificate now? I spent basically a year losing my ability to fly and then gained it back.
Yeah.
And, so I just love that in his protracted journey. And then Foxtrot Charlie, my kids have been part of this studying thing. I had them all come here, read this. and so they've all watched him. He said they've all watched me be stressed out all about this. So that's another pro tip, right? Utilize child labor to help you study. So in the words of our friend One Dull Geek, welcome to the club for those that have just passed check rides or expect to hear that soon from One Dull Geek. If you do pass your check ride, and make sure you reach out to us, and we would love to talk to you for any of your check rides. We have more conversations to have. This is the private pilot conversation. We're about to start into our doubleheader, which is going to be the instrument conversation. But we also have some really good stuff for multi, commercial, glider, really great conversations.
Yep.
So we're not going to do all of those as special episodes, but we are going to do instrument up next. So everybody that's in the chat right now, stick around.
And it's a great time now
yeah.
because apparently it's VFR back at John Toon.
Yeah, we're back now. We're back, guys.
It's all clear, so it's all good. Thanks, guys. Great discussion tonight. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Just as Brian said, y'all stick around, and we'll hit this next one. Just want to, we talked about stress during Checkrides. I just thought bit of wisdom tonight. I just had it pulled up. Worrying works. I worry about 90% of the things, and they never happen. So
it works.
Signing off, episode 129 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. See ya.
Man, it's such an instinct. We hit the
Don't
go out
turn it
music,
off.
and I always hit in stream like during the go out music go out video, and it's like, no, if we do that, we're gonna lose everything.
I could feel your automatic script brain about to click something, but I guess you knew.
I did see the comment, so yeah.
I'll be right back. You guys hang out amongst yourselves in the chat and everybody else, and we'll be back in about 4.3 minutes, and we'll head on into episode 130. Is that right? 130.
Yeah,
you're correct.
Yeah,
insane. You know what, hey guys, we're on a roll. Why don't we just go ahead and get the next 2 or 3 done tonight?
I'm down with that. As long as you come up with something to talk about, I'm
we can do it like a Jerry Lewis telethon style.
Hey, you got to see Mr. Ballard's comment here, Brian, before you.
2 hours of duel received. Yes,
I like it. Yeah. Louis, nice. Yeah, we've been kind of on a roll with these debriefs lately, and they kind of go. I don't know. It cycles, obviously, but depending on who's doing Checkrides and everything else. But it was about a month ago that Mark did like 4 of them in a week. So it's like there's have been a lot. I know there's 2 this week. There's one tomorrow night. There's one Wednesday night. So yeah, we've been busy with those. Also, Wednesday. Wow, all my time zones are wrong because I was traveling. Not only is there a debrief on Wednesday, but that's also Erica's Mentor Live. So nice and busy Wednesday. Instruments tomorrow. So what's Wednesday? Mr. Geek, if you go back and look at the transcript of this episode, your name is mentioned about 700 times. So you stepped out, and it just became the Mark episode. So yeah. I was just reading Mark's comment on Discord or over in avionics because I posted something wrong. But yeah. Oh, that's really cool, Corey. You can hit me up as well. We have, I don't have 5 sport pilots, maybe 7 or 8 in the community. So for a long time, I felt like I was the only one. But yeah, there's nothing that says you have to only do a sport like cross country. You can always just do it long. Or you can do what I have been doing, which is, hey, you know what? I just flew from Alabama to Arkansas. I'm just going to check the box in my logs that say this is also a private pilot check ride or private pilot cross country, because who says you can't have 100 cross countries in your logbooks, or, a dozen commercial cross countries that are eligible. I don't know why I do that. It's kind of pointless, but my long solo cross country, which was private pilot length, was coming back in by Mr. Cox. I was coming back in, and there was a TFR at the airport. There was a mile away, and the weather came in. It was really bad, and so I had a real adventure. I actually wasn't able to land back at my home airport on that cross country, which is kind of wild. Hey, Ben. Oh, he doesn't have his ears in yet. People are tired of me babbling here. It's like everybody's leaving now. Oh.
Since Elliot's still in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and put the request in. Echo Charlie, I've got a flight to Europe, and I was just wondering, is there any chance you could come pick me up? And I think the Gulfstream could probably make it to Middle Europe.
Yeah.
In one load. Any chance of that happening?
The company won't notice that the jet's missing, right?
Just, don't know until you ask.
Yeah, exactly. It was commented that we're missing Lord Alpha Juliet tonight. So,
yeah, I saw that leader put that in there. I have to say, it's not my week to keep up. I don't know where he is.
It's not your week. Yeah.
Next week's my week while I'm out.
Yeah. Put you on the standby list. Oh, you can jump seat to Europe.
Check. Oh, there we go. I'll take that standby list.
Yeah.
I'll be holding my breath. How do I sound, Brian? Any better?
You're good now. Yeah. For a minute, it was kind of intermittent or something. Yeah, but it's fine. Don't touch anything. Don't do anything. Don't stand. Don't sit. Don't move. Don't breathe.
Yeah.
But we're going to need you for this next one. So let's get it started.
Rock and roll. Ooh.
Cool. Let me fire it up.
Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. What is it like to become a pilot in midlife? The challenges are unique, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences. You definitely should not take any advice too seriously from an aviation podcast that uses terms like icing on the vegetables. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello and welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we share the experiences and challenges of flying in midlife. Whether you're a seasoned pilot, training for a rating, or just thinking about getting started in aviation, we like to think of the podcast as your aviation companion and your weekly dose of aviation inspiration. Today's topic: instrument pilot check ride debriefs, insights, advice, and real experiences. Joining me tonight, well, I guess I should introduce myself first. Probably, if you don't know who I am, my name is Ben. I am a pilot with an IFR rating and a commercial certificate based in the metro Atlanta area. I fly a 182, we like to call the Beast. And joining me is my friend on Music Row, Nashville, home of the Bachelorette Super Charlie, flying a Cherokee 180 named Lucy. It's Brian Siskin. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. It's been a minute. So lots of new things have happened. We have I'm actually VFR, so that's good over here. Our friend Tim was nice enough to make these Aeroglass pieces for us, and so now it's in my screen here. The audio listeners don't know this, but I have a really cool display next to me that tells me what the conditions are. So, but yeah, I'm doing great, man. And we have a lot to do tonight, and we're gonna bang through this. But we're gonna be relying on you a lot tonight, Ben.
Okay, God help us all.
Yeah.
Also joining us, our sport pilot extraordinaire, based in Portlandia, just arriving back into Portlandia short while ago. He flies a flight design CTLS, we like to call the egg. It's our friend Ted. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well.
That's
Glad to be here.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's good that we're talking about IFR check ride debriefs, because this past Saturday I went with our friend Dan Y, who we met on this podcast through the chat, and it turns out he lives less than a half a mile from my house, and we've been meaning to go up together. And he is private or instrument rated pilot. He has a high performance certificate, so he qualifies as being a safety pilot. And I went up and knocked out 3 instrument approaches to get proficient and current. And I got to say, I walked away from these feeling really, really good. I flew 2 by hand, 1 by autopilot. The winds at 3,000 to 4,000 feet were pretty hard, about 30 knots for that altitude. And one of them was, the wind was coming almost due west, from the west. And I landed runway 31. So I had a little bit of a crosswind component coming into there. And hand flying it, I was pretty happy with the way I kept the needle squared. So I think it's probably more of Dan just being a really good luck charm for me on that particular lesson. But all 3 approaches, I felt really, really good about it. So, it's nice to go back up and really kind of dive deep back into the IFR nerdum and really kind of sink yourself back into it. I do enjoy that.
Well, I recently, yesterday I did an hour of simulated instrument. So that's something. And
is that where you're pretending like you're playing a horn or like doing the air drums? Is that
air
your
guitar.
version of simulated air guitar? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that your simulated instrument?
Yes. No,
But you went under the hood.
Yeah, in the foggles, and did stuff. So it was really good. I mean, I'm just trying to. It feels like a drop in the bucket sometimes, like it's not consequential, but I am getting interested in this, seeing how my concentration takes a minute to sort of dial in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, I have a question for you, Ben, actually, about this. Do you find once you're in actual IMC, that the level of precision that you have flying a very specific heading and altitude or whatever it is, that it's almost like your brain is like an ILS, where it's like there's a wider latitude, and then you start to it gets tighter, over time. I found that it took me about 5 or 10 minutes to really get to where I could keep it within 1 degree and 20 feet nonstop, but it took a while to kind of get into that place. Is that how it is for you? Or does that get better?
It does get better. But it is a perishable skill.
Yeah.
So, I flew under the hood with AJ on the way back from New Orleans back to McCollum. And I kind of felt like I was a little bit off, and it wasn't too bad, but it was just kind of clearing some rust off. I will say, early on in my instrument flying, not only the training, but post-training, post-check ride, you kind of have to force yourself to do your scan. Mm-hmm. It's not something that's intuitive.
Yeah.
I just looked up in my logbook. I've got just under 100 hours of actual instrument flying and about 50 hours of simulated instrument. Mm-hmm. And it has gotten pretty much automatic for me now that as soon as my horizon is obscured, I'm doing the scan.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it doesn't come automatic though.
I see. Well, so for me, we went to Knoxville and I basically flew the whole way there under foggles, and it was doing simulated instrument on a long cross country, there's only so many things that are kind of going on, but
Right.
but it is a sustained effort over time. And so that was good. And then what I was doing also was introducing variables to myself for kind of no reason, making myself do different tasks, making me, whatever I need to do with the radios or whatever I can, trying to find something in ForeFlight that I don't normally access, or I don't know. I was trying to find ways to make myself get away from my scans so that I would start to lose it just a little bit and figure out how long do I really have,
Right.
And I always think of One Dull Geek when he's talking about, scan, change one number on the frequency, come back
Right.
to your scan,
Right.
change the second number on your frequency, go back to your scan, then do the flip flop, and I was just thinking about that and realizing that if you're really committed to that absolute precision, which you have to be, then that's kind of what you have to do. So it was a valuable experience. It was good. And my autopilot must have known that I was getting upset with it enough to start calling the vendor, because it was flawless when we were on the way back, and my plane partner was flying. Then I was safety pilot. He was flying, but I wanted to test it to see if it would do a coupled approach and just do the RNAV into Bowling Green. And man, it just nailed it. So it's acting better. So that was good. But anyway, yeah, some good flying. Real quick, one thing that I did was shout out to everyone in the Kentucky area that was struck by these tornadoes. And the London, Kentucky airport is absolutely demolished. We did fly by that, and I got some points of view on that I can't even express how surreal it was to see. It was to see from the air how the trees just got laid down in a sort of a vortex, and something so violent making something that's kind of, I don't want to say beautiful, but it was just such an interesting geometry to see from the sky. But you could see, you could see the path of the tornado and how it danced through all of the hillsides and the country and the everything. But man, it just looked like it was ill will for the London airport, because you can see from the air, it's like it beelined straight for the hangars and the FBO, and is awful. It's just absolutely awful. So
Those pictures were amazing, where you could see 20 miles out or probably further of this path that this tornado took.
Yeah.
It really is like a scar on the earth, is really what it looked like to me. Like somebody just drew a line and just ripped everything out.
Well, it reminded me of crop circles, just kind of that idea of like being pushed over. Like, like once you realize those are trees you're looking at.
Yeah. Right.
Well, what it looked like to me was, it looked like that because of the distance, you couldn't see the detail enough to understand the sheer brutality of the energy that it was required to just completely lay down these massive forests. It looked like they'd all been kind of gently laid to sleep along each other or something. It was just sort of this interest. I don't know, I was very conflicted about just how kind of beautiful and strange it was, but how just tragic it is, because people lost lives, people lost all his houses, and and also just to see the luck of the draw. When you're in the air and you're looking at that, and you can see absolute devastation. And how is that building spared, or why was that house spared? How does that work? I don't understand the physics of this. But anyway, I feel really bad for everybody in Somerset and London. It's awful, and
Hearts go out to them.
Hearts go out to them. So anyway, that's my recent flying, and we've got a lot to get into. So let's move to the next thing.
I'm going to hit One Dull Geek's question. He asked me if my scan is also perishable. And again, that's just one of those things. To answer your question, yes. But again, doing it more and more, the more you beat it into your brain, over time, it will become more repeatable, and you can go longer gaps without it suffering so much. So I mean, that's just for me personally, that's how it's gone. So as we mentioned tonight, we're going to be talking about our IFR check ride debriefs. And again, a lot of this is coming from our listeners. Uh, Again, I pick up stuff that other people learn from. And, what we hope that you get out of this, dear listener, is that as you're progressing through your aviation journey, maybe you could stop in and look at our Patreon account and find a Checkride Debrief IFR and learn something from it. Or maybe you learn something from this podcast. Again, we're not here to teach. We're just here sharing our experiences and what we've gone through.
Yeah, I'd say the odds that somebody learns from this podcast is pretty low.
Yeah.
But there are experiences people can learn from.
We're the equivalent. Our podcast is the equivalent of like, no, but I got a guy.
Yes. I know somebody.
Yeah. Or the car commercials, performed on a closed track. It's like, this has nothing to do with the reality. Yeah.
Do we want to do the housekeeping and just knock it out real quick? I can just do that. Is that cool?
Yeah.
We love it.
All right. We'll just bang through this real quick. We are grateful for you all making this the best pilot community that we know of, a positive space where we share everything from training experiences, share personal minimums, tackle ownership challenges, review flight plans, and best of all, make new aviation friends. Connect with us. Join our Patreon community from $1 a month or do a one-time annual Patreon. It's 25 cents per episode. You can also do a PayPal drop via midlifepilotpodcast.com. Access the exclusive content that we're talking about even tonight, including the Checkride Debriefs, Killing Zone conversations, and more. And of course, our wonderful Discord community, the best community on the internet. 10% supports Freedom Aviation Network's anti-human trafficking efforts. Watch us live on YouTube, Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern. Share your stories, midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. And for everything Midlife Pilot Podcast, community feedback, merch, and more, visit midlifepilotpodcast.com. Boom.
Awesome.
Done.
Very cool. So again, we're going to follow the same format that we did last time. We'll start and maybe move along a little quicker. When you start your training, how you decide to get to that point, safety, utility of IFR, when's the time to pursue it, the actual training experience, check rides, all of it. We'll hit into it, and we'll start off with the question: why get an instrument rating? And quite frankly, I think maybe of all of us that are more apt to answer this question, Brian, it would be you. Why should we get a instrument rating?
Because it makes you better than other people. Even a lot of other pilots, which are already better than a lot of other people. So it's a way to sort of make yourself elite. And then more honestly, I guess I can say maybe it makes you a safer pilot, and you get some possibilities opened up to you that you would not have before. And it introduces a level of precision and knowledge that you're not going to get any other way.
I'd agree with that. When you're carrying loved ones on board and, you don't want to listen to screaming kids, which, I've had to do that. Staying in a spot when I was a VFR only pilot and could not get to where I needed to go.
I've never thought about that. That's like, it's like, don't you love flying with your family? Well, yeah.
Unless you get stuck.
It's better than being stuck with them. Yeah, that's ultimate external pressure. Yeah.
That's right. One of our listeners commented during his instrument check ride debrief. He goes, the first time I got stuck VFR somewhere, it was basically socked in with weather. And he was like, okay, this is no fun when you see all these people launching out of there to get on top of the cloud layer. I mean, there is some of that.
FOMO.
I think that the more you fly, the more you realize like, oh, this isn't for battling through insane weather. It's for, there's just a tiny layer. And I'm just sitting on the ground for 4 hours waiting for that weather to improve.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's just it. And don't get me wrong. You can have your instrument ticket and still be grounded due to weather. There's storms and stuff that you're not going to fly through or icing conditions. So,
well, and on the why get an instrument rating, the other part of it is the flip side of that, you file all the time in VFR weather, right?
Yeah.
Because you would prefer to have that kind of oversight and planning and route preference and all of the things that go along with what it is to file.
Yeah, with flight following these days, in most places, it's kind of 6 1 half dozen the other. In Atlanta, if you're flying into Atlanta, any of the airports, you're going to get put on an arrival about 99% of the time. I've actually developed to the point where when I'm in South Georgia and I'm coming in, I'll file VFR, but I'll cancel before I get to the Bravo, because then I can go over the top of Hartsfield and get to my destination a lot quicker.
You mean you'll file IFR and cancel?
That's right. I'll cancel before I get to the south side of the Bravo. If I'm coming from the southwest part of the state, it's really not hurting me. Or if I'm coming from Savannah, going around, it's not that big of a deal. But if I'm in Albany, yeah, you're going a long way around. So, but yeah, there's more to it than just flying your instruments.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Juliet Victor here is talking about just a lot of the reason, and there's a lot of pilots that are like this, that you have kind of a routine route that you want to do a lot, that is to go to your vacation home or to go to extended families locations. And so you're just going to be, the whole point is to fly places. And so you're going to be able to fly distances, but you can actually have at least one better chance of fulfilling plans as they were designed to be.
That's a great point.
And because with me and VFR, it's like, so I have the best intentions to get somewhere, but I make no plans. I've gone from like making some plans to making virtually no plans.
Well, and there's two other points that were just made. Our friend Adam in the chat said, yeah, flight following is great if you can get it. And especially in busy Charlie Bravo shelves, it can be a challenge to get flight following. Yeah. The second thing that I want to mention is when you're on an IFR flight plan, you do not have to worry about airspace violations. You don't have to worry about it, because they're going to, if there's an MOA and it's hot, they're going to route you around it. Yeah. If it's cold, you don't even have to ask. If there's a restricted area that's cold, you just don't have to worry about any of it.
It's the backstage pass of aviation.
I think there might not be a better way to describe it than that. I think that's an excellent way to.
Everybody can hear the show, but who's having free snacks?
That's right.
While enjoying the show.
There are downsides to that, right? Because I can fly through a MOA as a VFR pilot, where you're going to get routed around it as an IFR pilot, and so there are like, and just like you said, getting through.
Well, they use CTLS as target practice, so they want
exactly.
They want you to
come. They want a slow target. Yeah.
I'd like to direct you to a video that our friend Nathan Ballard put out about flying through MOAs.
Yes. So, I talked to them, and is it hot? Am I causing any issues? And I've had in the California Valley, but like, oh no, you're fine. Like, and you hear them routing around you. They're not playing. They're just transiting through it.
Right. You can hear them in the background, like, we got a live one.
Yeah, exactly. Is that a balloon? It's moving really slowly. Well, so one thing that we ask and that I kind of observe is, when do you decide to pursue the instrument? I think that's one of the things that different as a midlife pilot than as a career track young pilot, which is we do it when we are ready, when we want to, and when we're kind of motivated for it, instead of this is the next thing on the track so I can get my hours so I can get to the airlines. And I know that some people tend to do it pretty much immediately after private, but I think a lot of us tend to wait a little bit and get some flying experience. Zeb, who we quoted earlier, had the experience of being weathered out. He was stuck at a destination, and his partner asked him, well, if you had instrument, we could fly home, right? And like, oh, great. So she said, well, maybe you should start that when we get back. Like, oh,
yeah, that's
it's like if you knew how to fix a car, we could be driving right now. Is that true?
Yeah. Prescott Flyer. I'm working with pronunciation there. It's Arizona, so it's not Prescott. It's Prescott. Had an experience come back from Osh in the same way of just being stuck and waiting for the weather, which I know, Brian, you and I both had those experiences. It's like, well, I can almost see through this layer, but I'm stuck here.
How else would I be so? How else would I have gotten introduced to the arts district in Shreveport, Louisiana?
Exactly.
So there's pros and cons, but no, it's always better. It's always better.
I fell in love with Bentonville for that reason.
Yeah. All right. I got a house. I got a house there now.
I could see it. Yeah. So, yeah. So those are pretty common. I know that my experience, and obviously it's different because I'm a sport pilot and I can't get an instrument rating, but I didn't even want one for a couple hundred hours, and because like, oh man, this is there's way too much like for me to do already. And once I had some hours, it made sense, and I could see, okay, I now see what I'm missing. And so, and I think you can kind of see that with a lot of people where it's like, okay, I'm done with this is all I need to do, get out of flying, and then getting some experience and realizing, okay, I'm missing something here.
So there's two comments that I have about when to get your instrument. And of course, for those people that are pursuing the airlines, it's, you need to get to your ratings as quickly as possible. But the chief pilot at my school, who I mentioned in the last podcast, he's like, spend some time in the system, and meaning the air traffic control system, ATC. Yep. Get yourself used to it. Do cross countries. Do a lot of cross countries. And he said 200 to 230 hours is a good time. Now, there's some people out there that feel like when you're doing your private check ride and you're in that study mode, that you want to just continue that and not have to start it back up. And I respect that. There's nothing wrong with going straight into your instrument afterwards. If you've got it, then I say more power to you. So, and that leads directly into building on your private pilot experiences, because this is definitely a step up from doing your private. One of our listeners quoted, he goes, I flew to Catalina Island, I flew to Palm Springs, I flew to San Diego. He just let me fly the plane everywhere. And that how most of the people that did their debrief had significant cross-country experience before starting their instrument trading. Part of that is you hear so much on frequency of people that are in the IFR system, and it's just about like osmosis, where it just kind of creeps into your brain, and it really does move you along a lot better, or you're kind of getting a head start in your training when you do spend some time in the ATC world.
Yeah, keep in mind when we talk about having that much flying experience, you need to be in the NAS. You need to be talking on flight following. You need to be talking to towers.
That's right.
You could have 500 hours off your grass strip, never even using a radio. That's fine. But what we're talking about is getting that experience talking to ATC and getting comfortable with that. If you've never heard suggested heading, those are the types of things that you should be aware of before you do that. So that's
ultimately, just the system is so nuanced, and there's so many wrinkles that are almost impossible to train. And so it really is just a matter of running into these strange situations, I mean, even just little things like, I was flying recently with someone where, we were not able to get we were starting to lose the center frequency that we were on. The signal was starting to get really bad. And they were flying, and I just proactively just called the controller and said, hey, just let you know, we've got you maybe 1x5, probably going to lose you. What's the next frequency? Or do you have another transmitter? Or, what would you like us to do? And he was happy to hear it. Here's the next frequency that you're going to get. If I lose you, give it this, 10 minutes, or, he'll give you some framework of, okay, if this, then this. And I think that there's a lot of just little nuances of things that you just don't really get trained in that will help you very much in your IFR training, because it's really not even about the particulars as much as it is fully having no having absolute confidence to speak with ATC about anything on any level at any time, and just having a sense of where their heads are and how much they would rather hear from you than to try to shy away from it and then have something happen that's more complicated, because now they've got to get somebody to relay, or they've got to now they've got to do this whole thing. So which is, by the way, a side note, everybody should listen to Opposing Bases if you're going down this road at all, and if you're not, you're doomed to fail.
You're doing yourself a disservice, because
okay, that's a better way to put it.
when you're going through training, I can assure you that there are 1,000 questions that are going to come into your head while you're just listening to the frequency.
Yeah.
And if you spend any time listening to that podcast, a lot of those questions and it really does help in understanding the bigger picture of what's going on in the system. So
yeah,
my radio work has gotten a lot better just from listening to OB and having them as experience. When I went to Texas and back, I had to ask a couple of airliners to relay for me, and I was like, "Oh, I'm comfortable doing this. I know I've never had to do it before, but I know what to say and how to ask it, and it's great." So having those kind of advanced experiences are kind of interesting.
Definitely, just having enough empathy to know that there's another side of the table there that wants to have a conversation with you. So. Yeah. So now we'll get into the sort of the training experience aspect of this. We talked about this on the VFR or private pilot side in the last episode. Same thing here. The importance of finding the right instructor, and what are the qualifications for that, and what are you looking for, and why should you look for that. And Juliet Victor had a great point here in his instrument check ride debrief that he did with us. A lot of these guys that are out here teaching, they don't have much actual instrument IMC condition experience. So I really wanted a real world pilot to teach me. I think that's massive. I being a latent to instrument training VFR pilot that has almost 700 hours, it's going to be pretty hard for me to look at somebody that's only trained, never traveled, never been anywhere, and they've got 225 hours. I can't, I don't know. Like that would be a super weird dynamic for me. I definitely have only entertained and worked with any instructors that have more experience and are not just on that track. And that's just for me. That doesn't mean it doesn't work for other people, but I don't want to be a part of a factory. So there's that. And then also Prescott Flyer, the person that taught me my transition training for aircraft, my RV9A, is also a CFII. He also happens to fit in the airplane, just barely. So you might even have some things like that where it's all really about the plane and the not just the teacher fit, but the physical fit and all of that. So yeah. And then I'm just going to go ahead and move right into training aircraft and equipment, because Juliet Victor has this amazing Comanche, which I've had the pleasure of taking a ride in. The Comanche is, by the way, the coolest plane. I'm sorry, it just is. Sorry, Ben. Sorry, Ted.
I'm going to agree with you on that. There's something about the Comanche, despite its wings being on the wrong side. I'm going to give you that.
It just looks like an airplane.
Virgil's has the cloth blinds on the inside of it that remind me of an RV from like the 70s. These planes from the 50s, but it's like, oh, this is a classy plane. Like, you can just pull the shades shut.
It's but you don't want to, but don't take any offers. If anybody offers you candy, don't take it.
It's worth it.
So, but he said the Comanche, I had a little over 100 hours. When I took the check ride, I had 337 hours. He spent some time in the plane, and really that's a key thing. And that's part of what delayed me a lot to even start my instrument path, is because I just didn't have, I did not want to be flying this or that airplane to do it. I wanted to be an airplane that I knew I could fly consistently. And buttonology, I am learning painfully, woefully, and all of that. And your settings and just your feel for the plane, all that stuff matters so much. And I think he's saying we got a Garmin 430 VFO, the autopilot. What is he? Okay, Prescott Flyer. Yeah, the first generation G3X the non-touch. We got 2 primary displays, Garmin 430. Both of those have VFR capabilities, autopilot, ASBN. You know your equipment, you know what you have, and you can get trained on those things specifically. Ben, you've been flying the same plane. Did you ever do any instrument flying and not your plane?
I did. We played around a little bit in the 172, the TA plane that I trained in.
When you're doing a commercial, right?
When I was doing my commercial.
Yeah.
But I was playing on instruments. I was under the hood. I was actually flying.
Okay. How'd that go?
Very hard. Now he had 2 G5s in there. And when you're transitioning from a magenta needle to a green needle, can be a little cumbersome. So we stuck with RNAV approaches as much as possible. Stayed away from the ILSs. But no, it's just something new and different. I think some technology would be easier to adapt to. But so, but yeah, if you have the opportunity, try to train in the same plane, just to wrap that up. But the other aspect of it that they were talking about is balancing life and training and scheduling challenges. We've said this on the podcast before, to any person, whether it's your private or your instrument, the more training you can do in a week, the better, the cheaper it's actually going to cost you, because you're not going back and relearning things. From our friend Zeb, he said, I went from twice a week to once a week to kind of putting the fine tuning on, and my flying turned into a dumpster fire. Juliet Victor says, trying to juggle a family and a business, and doing this is more or less a hobby. Some things just get in the way.
Yeah.
We're midlifers. That's what we're all about. And then one last one from Prescott Flyer is about training cadence. He says, we were initially doing Saturdays and Sundays, but we decided to space it out and try like a Saturday and a Wednesday just for space repetition and kind of let things sink in. Mm-hmm. So, and a couple other things really to talk about that. When you're doing your instrument training, you're allowed to fly your own airplane. You can have a friend that has the same type rating of that, or is qualified to fly that airplane. You can have them sit in the right seat and be a safety pilot, and at least build some instrument time, work on your scan. There's some things that you can do without your instructor to help at least keep you fresh, if not, take any step backwards.
Yeah. But to be clear, not in IMC.
Not in IMC. You have to be in VFR conditions. Again, we are not CFIs. We are not DPEs. So please consult your CFI.
So, we in the debrief, we ask about how people handle ground school, and instrument, or where it becomes a little bit different than private, because at the instrument level, you can argue about why this is, but Shepherd Air becomes an option, which is really good at really dialing in the information you need to know for the written. Not to be confused with the information you need to know to fly instrument, but to pass the instrument written test. And it's very effective. Everybody loves it, I think. Prescott Flyer got a perfect score coming off of his. But as far as gaining the knowledge to fly instrument, people are all over the place besides that. Juliet Victor used Sporties, Rob Machado, Zeb used Flight Insight. There's a lot of choices to make there. And I think people have the same question about doing the private. It's like, use whatever you like. Use whatever works. But it becomes a little bit different at the instrument level, where you can use Shepherd Air to pass the written test. Well,
you kind of have to think of it like the SAT. There's specific prep for a specific methodology, and you have to divorce your brain from thinking that the test matters. It matters, but it's not. It's a sidecar to the whole thing, and so you have to really understand that. I'm in the middle of. I've been in and out of studying phases, for quite a while. I'm a terrible test taker, and I will say that the way that the FAA sets up their test and their testing, and the way that the tests are so divorced from actual benefit, is so painful for me, because when I know that, and I'm still having to spend all of this time, and synapses that are barely firing
Yeah.
to be able to try to do this particular thing. And it's really, let's just be honest, it's more of just a hurdle than a practical benefit. That's probably one of the things that's the hardest for me right now. But I think about it, I'll get dark on you guys for a minute here. I remember when I was a kid and I realized that I was not afraid of death anymore. And the reason I figured out I was not afraid of death is because I realized it's kind of like going to the dentist. I just thought, I hate going to the dentist so much. But you know what? Every other kid in this class has to go to the dentist. Everybody has to go to the dentist. And so if everybody's going to die, like, so if the death rate becomes like a 50% thing, then I'm going to be really freaked out about death. But as long as it remains 100% for all life and all living things, then I can reconcile with it. And that's how I feel about the instrument written test.
It's 100% fatality rate taking.
It's just like everybody,
it's
it's ridiculous and seems, but everybody's stared at those VOR images. Everybody's gone through the same gauntlet, and everybody's okay, I think.
And be okay with learning something for the test.
Right.
Just do it. Everybody's like, oh, don't train for the test. Like, yeah, just do it with this.
Yeah.
There's a good chat going on of a lot of people loving Flight Insight for learning instrument, not just for the test. And Ben, you used Flight Insight for a commercial, right?
I did. Just has a really great way of explaining things. Again, this is Shepherd Air is, to me, the best for the test prep training.
Yep.
But when you actually want to learn something and understand why things are the way they are, there's a lot of great online ground schools. Yeah. So, but it was a very reasonably priced. He's got great courses, got great visuals. So, it's choose your whatever, suits you best, but
pick your vegetables.
Pick your vegetables how you want. The next thing we want to cover are training challenges, getting actual IMC or using autopilot or making training more realistic. But I think I had about 3 hours of actual IMC during my training, and I wanted that. The Foggles are great. They get the job done, but it's not the same because inevitably when you're wearing the Foggles, you're going to tilt your head down and look over my glasses like I'm doing right now. You can't avoid it. It's just going to happen. But that first time when you're by yourself and you pop into a cloud, if I hadn't had a little bit of time in there, I'm sure spatial disorientation would have been a thing. I think I would have gotten, the first time I did it with my instructor, I felt it. But first thing he said was, trust your instruments. Look at your instruments. Are your wings level? Yes. Okay. Then we're fine. Prescott Flower said, so we kind of have a saying here. There's either lightning in the clouds or there's rock in the clouds. So where he is, getting actual IMC wasn't really an option. And results will vary. I know I've seen Aero Grizzly in the chat talk about wanting to get his instrument. I think the coast of California is an IFR pilot's dreamland. That's super consistent. You should never lose your IFR proficiency in California if you have your instrument ticket, because you're always going to have the marine layer. So, results will vary from where you are. Autopilot training. I mentioned at the top of the podcast, I did 2 hand-flown approaches and 1 autopilot. If you have an autopilot in your plane, again, I'm not an instructor, but that DPE is going to ask you to do an approach with it and without it, because to be safe, you really need to know how the autopilot's going to treat it. It is not as straightforward as they seem. We still have some approaches that we struggle with on our autopilot. specifically ILSs. And if the controller, is giving you a 30-degree turn to approach the final approach course, sometimes it struggles lining up with it. It just, and sometimes you have to, hand fly it. But when it's an RNAV, it handles it very, very nicely. But
I ended up recently in a hold because it was I wanted to see how well the autopilot would do, and I was like, wow, it's doing it so perfectly. We are going exactly away from the airport right now. So
yeah, that's exactly right. I like in the chat, John C says, I did my instrument cross country in actual IMC. I was really surprised at how much updrafts and downdrafts affect the tiny planes we fly. That's another aspect of it too. When you're on an instrument approach and you're in IMC and you've got a crosswind, that is probably the hardest thing you'll do in instrument training, in my opinion, is keeping that or finding that attitude of the airplane, where to point the nose to hold your course. Can be very challenging, but the only way to get better at it is to keep doing it over and over again.
There's been some interesting conversations in the Discord lately as well around this, about remedies for being on automation and realizing that something's not going according to plan, and then how to quickly change to flying the plane, and then whether to just commit to flying manually, or do you want to try and work out something to the effect of reprogramming or whatever it is you might want to do. And you've probably got a lot of experience with that, Ben, but do you ever find yourself in a situation where it's not an A or B in terms of automation versus hand flying? There's going to be hybrids of those experiences.
So it's funny you say that, because our plane's a little bit different. On our yoke, we have a autopilot kill button, but the way the wiring is so old, it's basically an autopilot nuclear option. Because once you hit that button, it's not coming back on. So you're hand flying it from that point on.
So maybe that's a blessing.
It's
right.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Usually when I get to that point, if it's not doing what I want, I don't. And especially if you're an IMC, there's no need. Just, how to hand fly it. Turn off the autopilot. Go hand fly it. For me, it's a pretty simple discussion. Yeah, but I was kind of forced into that. I didn't really have a choice when I first started flying. Maybe in the next plane when we have a nice GFC 500 and
And you have a 430 also, right?
430 WAS, yes, sir.
So you're in the same boat as I am, where it's like programming is somewhere between it's like a caveman GPS in a lot of ways.
1988 to 1992 currency is basically what it is. It can get confusing. We actually had a discussion, Stuart and I did, where he was on an instrument approach, and they told him to expect this fix on the approach, and then he got handed off to a different controller, and then they told him to go direct to the next fix, which is and that sequence messed him up. The 430 did not like it trying to go direct to the intermediate fix. Did not like it. And he ended up having to hand fly it because and there is a method to do that exactly, and we talked about it afterwards. He went to a 430 simulator and walked through the steps. And to Wendell Geek's point, 430 pilots, 430 Garmin 430 pilots, please don't give me a Victor Airway. He's right. There's no Victor Airways in there, but all you need to know is the start point and the end point, and then during your course you can add the intermediate fixes. But it's a pain in the butt.
I can just see you getting a direct to and from them, and you're like, no, actually, I'd rather fly the whole thing.
That's exactly right. No, we're good where we are. It happened on the way to Tango 82. We got a Victor Airway around it, and I pulled it up on my iPad, and I put the first one till you had to make a turn, and then you put the intermediates in there, and then so it's a little bit of work, but we had a headwind and I had a lot of time on my hands, so it really gave me something to do. So, but
You
anyway,
had a spare seat for your punch card machine. You're programming new ones and feeding them into the
it's
dash.
not like
Yeah.
a punch card. It's more like the flip cell phones when you're
Oh, it
texting,
is.
when you have to hit the number 3 times to get
Yeah.
to the letter you
T9.
It
want.
is. That's a great
Yeah.
point. It's the T9 of avionics.
T9 was what I couldn't think of. Yes.
I felt so dumb. Every time it was either I'm pressing enter and I needed to press in on the button or vice versa.
The question is, does Garmin have an Easter egg in the 430 and 530 that is snake?
Yeah. Or Konami code. Yeah.
All right, so,
So,
Ben,
but-
Ben,
yeah.
talk us through getting Checkride ready.
It's different. With the private, we never know. We always have that feeling: am I ready? Am I ready? With instrument, you really kind of know. You do enough approaches, you do enough instrument flying, you do enough of the stuff in between, where you could get pretty comfortable pretty quickly. There's a couple of approaches that you may be asked to do, like DME arc. That takes some practice. It takes some mental gymnastics. And if you're going to a check ride at a location where there are no DME arcs anywhere close by you, then you're all the better for it. But flying ILSs and RNAVs and even VORs, you do it enough through training where it's pretty easy to feel confident about your check ride. That's the flying aspect of it. The written and the oral part, that's a different story, because there's a lot of regs in there that you really kind of need to know. And while you can look the information up, it's not a good look to have to do that. What are your minimums, or what do you have to choose an alternate, and what are the alternate requirements, and what are the non-standard notes, and all the stuff that goes with that.
Well, the also, you've already had an experience with a check ride. And so there's a lot of demystification there, because when you're doing your private, it's like, it's like you're going to be led into the back room of some dark castle and then beat with sticks or something. Like, you don't know what you hear about it, but like, what is it really? And
Zero experience. Yeah.
So now you have a sense of like, okay, these are how check rides go. And then when you have that experience that we talked about in the last episode, where everybody realizes that DP just wants you to succeed and wants to teach, and just relax and know where the minefield is, right? Like the CDI button or whatever, but we're not.
So
yeah,
I agree with all of that, and I want to get to some of our listeners' debriefs comments. But I will say, I did have a moment in my oral portion, and again, this is you feel pretty confident walking into it. So my anxiety was not the same level as walking into the delivery room, as we mentioned in the last episode. But I will say, there's this fear of, am I overconfident? How bad am I going to feel if I really screw this up? And there was a time when he was asking me, we were talking about weather during the oral. He goes, what are those things called when there's really bad weather? And I knew in my brain what that answer was, but I couldn't come up with what's an airmet or what's a sigmet. Very basic private level stuff,
right.
But I just blanked on it.
You're
and
like hail balls.
Yeah. You were behind the plane and you were in the room.
What was funny is my DPE is the same one that did my private. He knew I knew the answer.
Yeah.
And I think he was having a little bit of fun with me. Like, I'm going to give you just enough to see how long I can make you agonize over this.
Well, Dev Cannon over here, he's talking about in the chat. I think I was more nervous going into the instrument check ride than my private. So I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's just part of it. I wanted to mention it was a very conversational, just like the private was. Prescott Flyer said, I wanted to have everything at a glance to answer his questions, to make sure he felt I was qualified and the airplane was qualified. So we talk about binders for the briefing and all that. And I did all that as well. And I think there is something to that you're setting up expectations ahead of time when you do that.
I love this quote from Juliet Victor. He's about the sort of approach to these questions. He says, we would talk about a subject and he might ask me about, is this a good decision? The answer is always no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can you or should you are two different conversations.
Yeah.
So,
That was definitely something that has come up from a lot of people, is there's a lot more application of knowledge in the instrument level than there is in the private level. Zeb talked about, okay, so you have to do this, but why? And I think we're hearing that from a lot more people of, why do you need to file an alternate? Why do you do this? Why do you do this? That doesn't happen at the private level because it's assumed you have more knowledge.
that's right. That's right. And before we get into the flight portion, I do want to give a shout out to our friend Wendy, who has got her instrument check ride coming up. So
Yes.
I'm hoping this helps, Wendy, and not making you even more nervous. But hearing you in the chat and in the things, I'm sure you're going to nail it. So, so the
And
flight
also,
portion,
by the way, sorry, what's the worst that happens? You just finish it. You know what I mean? Like,
you
they
take
don't
it
just
again.
say, well, you'll never get it.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, you'll get it done
Yep.
one way or the other.
So the different approaches to the flight test. We've had one talk about doing a traditional versus filed flight plans. Zeb said I filed. It was my first time filing, so he did it, and he lives on an air park, so he has a runway and a hangar. So
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
sorry,
most people, the DPE, just like the CFWIs simulate the ATC stuff.
Yep.
That's almost always what happens in the checklists.
Yeah. So, and it's been my understanding. I think it varies from DPE. You want VMC conditions to do this check ride.
We've heard of one that wasn't, but it's
That
very
wasn't.
rare.
It's
And-
yes, it's
and
more
usually,
often
yeah,
than
and usually
that way.
ATC does, or usually the DPE does the ATC side of the radios, but we've had a few that are different, which is always interesting.
Right, right. But some of the common maneuvers, I'll tell you from my personal one, and I was most nervous about shooting approaches wasn't a problem. Shooting approaches with a partial panel got my heart rate up a little bit. You didn't know what instruments he was going to fail. You had a pretty good idea, but flying an instrument approach using your whiskey compass, not very easy.
Oh,
Not very easy at all. We talk about the errors of the compass. You'll get to know those very, very well because you will, when you're going through training, that's just one of the things you have to get used to. From our listeners, Juliet Victor said about his sequence. He said, I did the flight portion straight after that, and then the pre-flight. He said his DME arc was perfect, and then he did a circle to land on the first one, and then went back and did a published mist after the circle to land. Prescott Flower said he did. We felt like we were getting ready by June and found out it was a 4-month wait to get the examiner. Sorry, that doesn't fit there, but the partial panel is what I was looking for. He says, I don't think everybody does all of the approaches there like we did. It is something, it's something you need to practice. It's not something that it's just one of these maneuvers that doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense. There is a very good reason to be practicing these.
So, Ben, when you had your instrument check ride back in the 70s and early 70s, so, Black Sabbath is in their heyday, a lot of cool things going on. The clothes, pretty cool.
Yeah.
You somehow had a Garmin 430, which is sweet.
cutting edge.
It was brand new.
Buy this
70s.
now. GPS is going to exist in 15 years, and it'll make sense. But just buy it now. Yeah.
What did you give me? What are some of the DPE delivered nuggets of wisdom or learning moments that you had, if you recall anything from your instrument check ride?
I'll say we did unusual attitudes, and what I felt was unusual in a learning moment is he did not take control of the airplane doing these attitudes.
Mm.
He told me, he said, I want you to fly the plane around. And I want you to either be making climbs, descents, turns, left, right, both. He says, you were going to do it for a few minutes, but then I'm going to tell you to stop and put the, and tell me what the attitude of the airplane is.
Mm.
And I would have bet a sizable amount of money that I was in a climbing slight left bank and I was descending in a right bank.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between that part of the instrument check ride and the private check ride as far
It's
as
very
unusual?
similar. You're just under the hood. You're not, it's when you're recovering, you're looking at your instruments and you're not looking outside.
Right. Well, I did it all under the hood. I think you're still in private. You do it under the hood.
I couldn't remember how you did it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, because that would have been the 60s.
Yeah, that would have been.
But yeah, Wendell Geek here is saying, yes, Erica did mention that right here on this very podcast. She said she tells her students to try to keep the airplane straight and level with their head down, and eventually they put themselves into an unusual attitude on their own, right?
Oh, man.
So, no, that's awesome. Zeb had said in his instrument check ride debrief, that one of the neat things about this guy is I know they're not supposed to teach you stuff, but I learned a lot with the private, and I learned a lot in this one. I don't think I flew a single approach the way I was taught. He was saying, I want to see it this way. So, I guess that would be either really comforting or highly unnerving. I'm not really sure which, but I'm glad that it worked out in his favor.
Yeah.
And Juliet Victor said, we finish that approach, and as I'm climbing out, DP looks over at me and goes, I really didn't mean that, and kind of chuckled. But that's the point, just to say that, you know what, like you can actually have a little bit of fun. Just don't have too much fun, or let them know that you're having fun, or just don't have any fun. Don't have any fun.
No, I wouldn't say that, but there's a thing about the instrument rating, and our friend Jason Peavy mentioned this, who, by the way, we're talking about Comanches, one of the most beautiful paint jobs on a Comanche you'll ever see. When you get your instrument ticket, one of the hardest things to do is to keep it current.
Yep.
You will start looking for marginal VFR days, no matter, any chance you can. But, when we're talking about building, real world experiences, transitioning to actual IMC, which is why you get this ticket, find someone who is comfortable in INC and just go ride with them. This is from Wendell Geek. Just go sit right seat and watch what they do. You can learn a lot from that.
So, Mr. Wendell Geek really had some imposter syndrome with his instrument check ride, because he did a real intense program, and he got out of it and was like, okay, I passed, but I don't know that I actually know what I'm doing in this. And, I've kind of been hanging around him long enough to see him go through that experience. And so I think that's part of what he means by that is it's like, okay, well, you learned the only person you've been with is your CFI sitting next to you. What do actual pilots do during their instrument flying? So
right.
It's, I think it's fair, but we also do that, this is mentorship, right? We do this at the private level as well.
Yeah. Again, you're going to have a whole new set of minimums. And when you're starting out, you're going to have, 700 feet above published minimums or 500 feet above published minimums, whatever they be. And as you build up your experience, you're going to find yourself shooting an approach at minimums. And it's no different than your VFR. You learn how to expand your minimums.
Do you have minimums for how thick of a layer you'll go through? Like,
no.
If it's solid from 7,000 to...
That's a great question. Starting out, I absolutely did. It wasn't how thick the layer was. It was, I'm not going to spend more than half the flight in IMC.
Okay, right.
Because, there was a trip to Savannah that I decided not to take, and it would have been IMC almost the entire way, and I was new to it, and I didn't want to go through that. I just didn't feel comfortable. Now, I could do it. I'd be perfectly fine with it. So, common themes across all of these. Brian, I love this note you just sent to me. It's like I have to scroll for 20 minutes to read all this internal note. That there's no way I'm going to be able to read that. I don't know if that was intentional, but
we need to come up with a name for this for our private chat, because it is kind of like I don't know, it's like the third eye or something. It's like
we have our little internal chat, and this one is literally like 12 hours long.
I was trying to paste just that in there.
Yeah, I got it.
And but I accidentally had selected a lot more, and then I realized, well, I mean, it's still valid. It's just going to
three chapters from War and Peace.
We do that. That's what it was. So no, in all seriousness, there are a lot of common themes. Finding the right instructor is very important. Understand why you're getting this, and understand that we all hear it makes you a better pilot. What it does is it helps you understand your airplane a lot better. Maybe not as well as a tailwheel endorsement will be, but it's nice to know that if I've got 10 degrees of flaps, 2,500 on the RPM, and 17 inches of manifold pressure, I'm going to be at 90 knots.
Yep.
Period. End of story.
Yeah.
There's those knowing your numbers. You're going to get to know them when you're doing your instrument rating. Zeb said, I think every private pilot should get their instrument rating. I think I'm much better pilot than I was before. I'm much more precise. That's a recurring theme, the precision that comes with it. From Prescott Flyer, he said, first and foremost, I wanted to just become the most knowledgeable, capable, safe pilot that I could.
Yep.
And then again, it opens up the door. You now have days you can fly where you previously couldn't. And, you made the comment from our previous fly into St. Simon's when I was bringing you and your lovely bride back to Nashville. Do you remember breaking through that layer?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There are views that you get in instrument flying that are like nothing else in this world. Especially if you do an early morning departure with the sun rising above a cloud layer, it's pretty magical. It never gets old, I can promise you that. And also the gratification that you get when you're popping out of a base layer and you're perfectly in line with the runway, there's a lot of satisfaction that comes with that.
Yeah.
Well, we would love to hear all of everyone's Checkride experiences, private and instrument. Please email any thoughts, feelings, missives, manifestos, diatribes, or anything else to midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. And we will attempt to read them with the best of our cognitive and linguistic abilities. I appreciate, Ben, that sort of bit of inspiration there at the end, right? Like there's still something, as much as it's technical and as much as it is precision, there's also a whole new sort of romance that is available to have with flying in instrument conditions that you cannot get any other way. And so, I'm all about it. It does cost money, so that is the thing. But it is worth it. And I what Prescott Flyer said here about, I just wanted to be the most knowledgeable, capable, safe pilot that I could. I just think that is ultimately what it's all about.
I agree. Well, we want to thank everybody in the chat tonight. It's been some really great discussions going on in there, and it's been a great chat for this one and the first part of this. So I appreciate you guys for that. The last bit of wisdom that I'd like to share with you guys tonight.
Ready.
I find television very educational. Every time someone turns it on, I go read a book.
All right.
Signing off, episode 130 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Goodbye, everybody. See you.